commercials that they put out into the business industry, asking them, bring us your business. We got labor for you. And I'm going to play that for you right now.
A real boom of job offers for inmates in the country. Both state and some of the biggest private companies are now enjoying the fruits of a cheap and readily available workforce, with tens of millions of dollars spent by private prisons to keep their jails full. RT's Gaina Chichikan takes up the story.
In the U.S., the market for cheap labor is booming behind bars. In the last 15 years, partnership between prisons and private manufacturers has increased significantly. They're becoming America's very own Chinese-style manufacturing line behind prison walls. Prisons, in fact, advertise themselves as such, as an alternative to outsourcing cheap labor to China or elsewhere. On the web, we came across this pitch that prisons prepared to persuade private sector companies to come and do business with them. Take a look.
There's not enough folks that will do this type of work in this country. So therefore, we're bringing back this industry that historically has been going out of this country, and we're putting it, inside the walls. And it's absolutely a perfect idea. I have a workforce that does not have car problems or babysitting problems, etc. They're always here, and they're always willing to come to work.
Bring your business to our labor.
A wide variety of industries take advantage of prison labor. Among many other things, prisoners make clothing, textiles, electronics, furniture, and even solar panels.
Just as we're trying to get China to stop with their prison labor, ours is at the same time increasing.
Hundreds of companies have used prison labor directly or through subcontractors, including Microsoft, Boeing, Starbucks, Victoria's Secret, and others.
They qualify for federal tax breaks. They can get recompensated up to 40% of the wages that they pay to these inmates. We as taxpayers, we have to house, feed, and provide medical care and everything for all of these inmates. We do this as taxpayers. It comes out of the tax pools. And that keeps the actual prison workforce healthy and in shape to go out and perform these jobs for these private companies.
Hard-working and reliable, inmates show up for work every day voluntarily.
Work in prison is mandatory, and the choice many inmates have is whether to work for a government-run prison industry for less than $1 an hour or a private one for a minimum wage of around $6. Unicor is a government-owned corporation that uses prison labor to produce all kinds of goods, mainly for other government agencies. 175 different types of products and services. You see the variety listed on their website. They, too, partner up with private firms now. Last year, Unicor's revenue reached $900 million. As far as private prisons are concerned, two of the country's biggest prison corporations made $3.3 billion last year alone.
Private prisons are traded on the New York Stock Exchange. They are for-profit companies, and the savings that they reap from using inmate labor go to their bottom line. It's money they otherwise don't have to spend in order to keep a facility running.
Large prison populations and harsh sentences result in greater profits. America's three major private prison companies spend around $45 million over the past 10 years on lobbying state and federal governments for supporting immigrant detention, mandatory minimum sentences, 3 strikes laws, and other legislative measures that contribute to the growth of America's gigantic prison population. The U.S. now holds more people behind bars than any other nation, more than 2 million. That's 1/4 of all prisoners in the world. From a cost-effectiveness point of view, the $45 million that private prisons have reportedly spent over the past decade lobbying to keep prisons full is peanuts compared to the billions that they make every year. One can argue about the many causes and effects of America's skyrocketing incarceration rate, but since prisons became a for-profit industry in the U.S. 30 years ago, the number of prisoners has gone up dramatically. Not to say that it was the only cause behind the spike, but many argue it was part of it. And now with the cheap labor market expanding behind American bars, one is wondering whether the justice system in the U.S. is adopting market values. In Washington, I'm Ganesh Shekan.
When the congressman picked up the letterhead, he's like, did you write this bill because it's got Alex figurehead right there on top of it and showed it to the world? They are literally writing our laws. When you got a prison company writing your laws, what do you think is going to happen? And they know exactly what they're doing. We have sat in on their quarterly earnings reports and listened to the terminology that they use and how they talk about what's going to happen next. They know before we do what is going to happen next. They already know what laws are coming into place. Why? Because they wrote the damn law. They already know what tax or lax rules are going to be applied because they pushed these things into place. They spent $45 million in 10 years just lobbying Congress.
When you say they, are you talking about Dick Cheney in a RICO case where he built prisons, empty prisons sitting around the United States until they can convert white supremacy to start hating on these immigrants and amp that up so that the legislative laws through ALEC, their other mechanism, starts creating these laws that start populating these prisons? But it's by design.
It's by design.
And the they has a name, and they're individuals carrying out the premise of white supremacy through the system.
You're absolutely right. And for those that don't know, Dick Cheney, while he was a sitting vice president, was indicted in Texas.
That's right.
Charges of racketeering.
Right.
RICO charges. Not only was it Dick Cheney, but it was also the Attorney General at the time, Alberto Gonzales.
That's right.
It was shown that they were adjusting our laws to keep people in jail longer, to get them in there earlier, and for less reasons. Now, why would they be doing that? Because Dick Cheney, while he was sitting as the Vice President of the United States of America, had $80 million of his own money invested in the Vanguard Group. The Vanguard Group is one of the main companies that invest in private prisons. So they were changing our laws and sending our children and men and women in prisons to line their pockets while they were sitting in office. And it's not just vice presidents or congressmen. You probably are supporting the prison industry with your retirement plan and your 401k. We've discovered that the United States Teachers Union collectively has almost $100 million invested in the construction of private prisons. Now, when you think about that, and it's not because they asked for it, it's because their money is being invested for them through these private investment firms like the Vanguard Group. And $100 million of the teachers' union's money is going into these private prisons. That means that if you're an educator or teacher, you may be retiring partially based on how many of your students went to prison. Anybody have a question? I see your hands up.
Yeah, I was just wondering how they can call that voluntary labor.
If you look at the Texas textbooks in the education system right now, they call them unpaid interns. And what the unpaid interns are referring to were slaves. The people who were forced here into America in bondage at the end of a whip or gun or whatever it is to pick cotton or build houses or whatever they did are now called in the Texas school books for grammar schools unpaid interns.
What about immigrant workers?
If you go to the Statue of Liberty right now, and you look at the immigrants that are coming in, who are documented who are coming in through the Statue of Liberty, you'll see a section for the African Americans in there, and they're called unwilling immigrants.
Involuntary
immigrants. They're not called slaves, because see, there's something about America that we refuse to address our own evils. We refuse to accept the things that we have done to people. It's called cognitive dissonance.
Yes.
It's a big issue. When something is presented to you that's completely contrary to everything you have ever believed, rather than accepting the truth, which is too painful to bear, you would rather go with the lie. Which is going to happen here today, probably. One or two of you may walk away today, and by next week forget everything I just told you. It'll be in the back of your head somewhere, and you'll be like talking to somebody about mass incarceration. And then somewhere in the back of your head, but Max said this isn't mass incarceration. This is slavery. And you'll still be talking about mass incarceration. This is not mass incarceration. This is slavery. This is not injustice in the courts. This is slavery. This is not racism among our police departments. This is slavery. There are incentives to hunt people. There are incentives to lock people up. They're making a fortune out of it. As I said earlier, $1 trillion a year industry.
And when they can't lock you
When
up,
the
they
Department
kill
of
you.
Justice, about a month or so ago, made the decision to phase out their contracts with these private prisons, which only affected 17 prisons, the GEO Group, their stock on Wall Street dropped 50% in a matter of hours. They would have went out of business that day if